Wickedly Judged, dedicated to exposing wrongful convictions and fighting for justice reform in America. I'm Rebecca, your host. And if you're new here, this show is for anyone who believes that justice isn't just a verdict, it's a promise, a process, and far too often a fight. At Wickedly Judged, we shine a light on the cracks in our justice system by sharing the real stories of those who have been wrongfully accused, convicted, and forgotten by the courts. We give a voice to their families, advocates, and survivors who refuse to accept injustice as the end of their story. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors, Veterans Alliance, Yarn Therapy for Me, Justin Apron, Liberty First Radio, NDVLB, Prime Ledger Group, JSIL, and Wickedly Judged Justice Activation Project. And a special thanks to JP Verse of Versifier Records for providing our powerful intro and outro music on our audio podcast. Your support fuels our mission. Thank you for standing with us in the fight to expose wrongful convictions and demanding true justice. Today, we're going to be doing an interview with Kent McGowen, who was a deputy in Harris County, Texas, and Kent will be telling us his story and what happened and how he was wrongfully convicted. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey guys, welcome back. I told you I was going to be doing an interview today with Kent McGowen. Kent, how are you doing today?
Just fine. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to getting this story out to the public.
Absolutely.
To let other people know that, like I always say, if this situation can happen to my innocent family, me, it can happen to anybody out there. It can happen to anybody out there.
It absolutely can, and more people need to
And
understand that.
Yeah.
So, before we really get into this interview with the case itself, who was Kent McGowen before all of this even happened?
Well, I grew up. I grew up in Houston, Texas. My dad was in the oil and gas business, and I grew up like everybody else that grew up in that era, in '70s and '80s in Houston. Uh, Graduated high school year early. Got married to my high school sweetheart 6 days after I turned 18. To I think both of our parents' chagrin, and went into the Air Force. Had an older son at 19, and I transferred from the Air Force to active duty Air National Guard, and then Air Force Reserves. In total, I did a little more than 7 years military time. But in the interim, when I got out of the Air Force, I applied for the Houston Police Department. It takes about a year to get on through the process, and we're living on at my dad's ranch in Waller County. It's the next county northwest of Harris County, Houston. This situation occurred, and I took a job at the local sheriff's department there for 9. Had no police academy training, nothing, and the county was so rural that we worked 12-hour shifts, and I was mainly night shift, working 7 to 7. It was pretty crazy. But I did that until I got hired on at the Houston PD. And I went to Houston PD, worked there a number of years, or patrol, special operations, and then for a couple of years I went back on patrol. Uh, After a few years there, number of years there, I had the financial opportunity to go finish college, which I took. Um, did that. While I was doing that, I worked for a couple of smaller agencies. There was a lot of controversy over when on that. Or for a little town called Tomball, also in Harris County. The chief of police there was very corrupt. He'd been a policeman. He's a retired Houston PD captain. I was working narcotics and organized crime with him, and my partner and 2 Montgomery County deputies working narcotics with. We're doing quite well with it. Bam! One day, nobody's buying, selling drugs, nothing to us. We knew we got burned. And it came back to that chief of police in Tomball. One of his sons was a drug dealer. And we're at his house, at his pool in his backyard, talking with him while his teenage boys are swimming in the pool. We thought nothing of it. Texas Rangers got involved. They polygraphed everybody except the chief of police. He refused to polygraph, of course, and he wound up getting fired. So I wound up basically going to work for the Harris County Sheriff's Department, and they needed instructors there, so I hired on. And actually, just hired on as a reserve deputy. And oddly enough, the detective who did the background investigations, he worked for my brother at another large police department in Texas. And my brother was a sergeant. He called me and said, "Hey, well, why do you want this reserve position? We need instructors. You have street time and whatever." It's all right. So I ended up taking the job, and because I love the job. I wanted to be a police officer since I was a kid. And then when I was in, I guess, junior high school, my brother he's older than me. He became a police officer. He did very impeccable career, 31 years, I believe, at a
Oh, wow.
larger city police department. Yeah. But when I went to for the sheriff's department, worked as instructor for about 14 months. And at that time, I had a constant run-ins with an overweight, slovenly, loudmouth, bully guy from Ohio. And mind you, that we're in Texas, and people in Ohio are a little more brash, and that Midwest accent. But no offense to you, because you're in Ohio, but they,
None taken.
yeah, nobody liked this guy. I mean, the command staff down to the lowest rookies. And he's always bullying the rookies in particular. And my partner at the time, as an instructor, he and I were the only ones who sent up to this guy, you know, and we had constant problems. I caught this guy, John Denholm is his name. I caught him tampering with our payroll, which is a felony at the time. I should have done so. I should have arrested him in hindsight, or at least got him fired. But this guy just targeted this deputy Ron Ackerman, this other deputy, my partner, and then and me, because everyone would just stand up to him. And then anyway, I wound up getting in this. I go on the streets. I wound up getting this shooting, and we'll back up and go through that in a minute. But jump ahead. There was the sheriff's department Harris County Sheriff's Department was extremely corrupt back then, extremely corrupt. And there was one particular major who he had this little organized crime thing, if you will, going on. Well, he was buddies with this Denholm and Sergeant Rogero, which we will get to. But as soon as I get in the shooting, this major steps in, promotes this John Denholm to lieutenant, puts him in homicide over my case, oddly enough. But yeah, we'll get into that. But
no corruption there.
Well, yeah, and also Ron Ackerman, my partner, they set him up on a felony charge, and guess who the chief investigator was? Denholm. And then when the Texas, not to jump ahead, when the Texas Rangers got involved in this many years later, I was explaining that situation to him. I remember the Texas Ranger looks at me and goes, "Let me see if I get this right. You and your partner, Deputy Ackerman, yeah." He said, "Both y'all had these personal issues with this Denholm." I said, "Well, everybody hated Denholm. He was a very despicable person." I said, "But yeah, we're the only ones that stand up to him." And Ranger said, he goes, "And both you and Ackerman wound up getting jammed up and set up, and it was Denholm, and y'all had personal issues with this guy." And he said, "This never raised red flags with anybody, that he was a lead investigator and both you guys went in prison."
Right.
His name was Val, this Ranger. I said, "Val," I've been hollering this at that point 25 years. I've been hollering this for 25 years. Nobody listens. When you're in prison, everybody thinks, "Oh, he's trying to get out of prison."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Well, what did Denholm testify at your trial? What did he say?" And I said, "He never testified against me, because if the prosecution would put him on the stand, animosity would have come out, of course,
Right.
what he's doing." And he said, "Well, who from the homicide bureau testified against you?" He said, "Nobody. I was clear of a homicide." He goes, "Who from internal affairs?" "Nobody. I was cleared." He's like, "How in the hell did you get convicted?" I said, "Man, piss poor lawyers and fighting a corrupt system."
Yep.
And I've had other media over the years ask me, they say, "This is hard to believe." They would say, "This is hard to believe. You have to have this vast conspiracy to set somebody up, send them to prison." I said, "No, not at all." I said, "When you have somebody within the system, and in this situation, within my own ranks, if you have somebody within the system outgunning for you, they have access to, all the investigators, money, they have access to all the witnesses involved, which they can threaten, tamper, pay off, make deals with them. They have access to all the evidence, if you will. They can tamper with it, manufacture it, destroy it, twist it any way they can. If they want to get you, they're going to get you. I'm telling you
Yep.
right now. I don't care who you are. And, you say, oh, money, people with money get big lawyers. I had the best lawyers you can get, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I remember I got convicted twice, which we'll get to. But to backtrack on your original question, is where I got started. I went to the sheriff's department. I went out on patrol. I got sent out in District 1, which is Houston's within Harris County. And then the sheriff's department down here patrols outside, like in between the city limits and the next county lines, if you will, basically. The unincorporated city parts of the county. But at that time, that was a nice area, District 1. And now it's not. It's completely out of control. But there were, it had its rough areas out there, of course, and it had
Right.
its, like I said, there's farmland, and then it had, upper scale, very nice, restaurants, nightclubs, shopping centers, big neighborhoods, very expensive homes. And I went out there on April 3rd, 1992. I recall it distinctly, it was my birthday. Out on patrol out there. And I was assigned to this area. It had basically 3 really affluent neighborhoods in it. And I wasn't there maybe a month or so. And on which I worked night shift. I worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And also these automatic weapons started showing up, or drive-by shootings, and just craziness started going on. And being night shift out there, like I said, basically an affluent. The actual area where I was, my beat was basically an affluent area. We had a lot of these rich kids, with nice cars, whatever. And I remember there was a disturbance, a loud noise disturbance. I went there, and there was, they were just regular kids. I told them to turn it down, whatever. But I was outside and they were, hey, you like being a cop? Yeah, yeah. I remember this one guy said something about the automatic weapons. He goes, you know about any shootings going on out here? And I said, well, I get wind of it. Yeah, sure. And this guy told me, he said, hey, this guy named Keith Skura, he's involved in this burglary ring. He's selling automatic weapons out here. So, of course, that got my attention,
Right.
And so he told me a guy drove a red Beretta, Keith Skura. And a few nights after that, I stopped a raggedy, I forget what, some raggedy little, like I'm trying to think, like a small station wagon type vehicle going through that neighborhood, like 2 in the morning. It just didn't fit in. Guy rolled through a stop sign in front of me. And so I pull him over. And the guy driving was Michael Schaefer. He wound up being my informant, which led to the shooting. It was Michael Schaefer, another guy in the front seat, and a female in the back seat. So I stopped them and I said, hey, I stopped you. No. You rolled the stop sign in front of me. Let's see your driver's license and insurance. So he gets it out. And like I said, there's been some books written about this, absolute tabloid trash. This woman was trying to sell books.
Right.
Whip it in there, how I threw him on the ground. I threatened him. I was hitting up on this 16-year-old girl. Just absolute nonsense, And then, the driver of the vehicle, I write him no citations, even though they said I wrote him these tickets. Or no, that'd be a record of that, no citations. So maybe 2 weeks later, he does the same thing again, but he's by himself. So I pull him over, and it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I pull him over, and he brings up the subject of these automatic weapons on the streets. And he's like, it was strange that he would bring this up. I'm just there talking to this kid. It was 2 in the morning, whatever. And he said, hey, man, he said, you know about these automatic machine guns? He said, these machine guns out here. And I said, well, I'm on patrol out here. I'm aware of the situation. I know there's been some drive-by shootings, houses shot up, whatever. He goes, yeah. He goes, I kind of know about that, My first thing is, why is this guy volunteering this? I mean, most confidential informants, they do it to get out of trouble, or like mainly drugs. They'll be trying to get rid of competitors or whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, so which that leads into a big part of the story. But he and so I give him, this is back in the day, they're beepers. We all have beepers. So I give him I still remember the number of my pager, 713-763-3236. I get my business card, and I write my beeper number. And I said, hey, if something comes up, give me a holler, man. And then he went on and kept talking. He was involved in this burglary ring on that the upper class, the county area, outside the city. And he said these gangbangers from Houston came up and they're recruiting these little young rich white guys, little white kids, white guys to burglarize these expensive homes, and the gang members were buying the weapons and converting them to fully automatic. And the little gangster wannabe guys, they were they're keeping all the jewelry and other guns, whatever, for the burglaries. So this guy, I'm very suspect of this informant at this point. But why are you volunteering this? So anyway, about a couple weeks later, he called me back, and he said, hey, some guys I hang out with, man, they burglarized a house last night. They got a stolen gun. You want me to set up a buy? So I said, yeah. So my sergeant from Ohio, his name is David Rogero. This guy is an utter coward. It'd take me 2 hours to discuss the things I've seen this guy, which caused the death of a person, a rescue mission on a hostage situation. He was so cowardly, he called us off of it. But he plays into this. But he, of course, but the informant gave me the information about the weapons. So I just went over that sergeant's head because hey, this thing's about to cut off. It says your meeting is at the end of its scheduled time.
It shouldn't cut off.
Okay.
It might give you the warning, but it's not going to cut off. It'll keep going. If it does, we'll just reattach it.
Yeah. But anyway, I go to my lieutenant, J. Oliver Coons. This guy was a great guy, fantastic officer, Marine, big GQ, clean cut guy. So I was running anything by my lieutenant, and he authorized the deal. So he said, hey, come in tomorrow, wear plain clothes, and we'll do the gun buy. So the next night, we amassed what we call a mass there. There's hardly any of us out there, like 4 other deputies, I think. And I went and got in a wrecker, plain clothes, working a wrecker, and I was kind of parked. And the gun buy went down in a parking lot next to a teen club at the time called Paragon. So there's a lot of people in this parking lot, whatever. I'm in the wrecker. I see my informant pull up. Then I see the bad guys pull up. They're going to buy the gun. And I see another, I think it was a gray Trans Am pulled up with 2, young females in it. Well, the one of the bad guys gets out. My informant gets out, and I see the exchange of money for the stolen gun. And the bus signal was my informant was going to take off his hat and put it back on like this. And he just asked, excuse me, I got on radio and I issued the command to take them down. So everybody rushes in. You always take down your confidential informant, to cover them.
Right.
So we go down there, we get everybody down on the ground, get them handcuffed, including these 2 girls who are obviously with them. These girls are hysterical. And I think these girls are like 16, 17 years old. These girls were hysterical. We don't even know these guys. We just met them at this place down the road, earlier tonight. We don't even know them, And I was like, man, I was very suspicious of that. But we let them go anyway, which is a large mistake. And so they got these 2 girls, got them handcuffed because they weren't in the cars with either one of the male suspects. They're in their own vehicle. And I told them, I said, hey, you need to hang out with a different crowd. These guys will get you in trouble sometime. So I admonished them on that, and I let the 2 young females go. So they went to a bar down the road, and they get the woman that wound up shooting 48 hours later. They wound up getting the woman that I shot and her boyfriend. Mind you, the woman I shot was married, and her boyfriend was married, not to each other. And they come running down to the scene. And the guy that was with her was like a full-on mobster. He looked like something out of a Joe Pesci movie. Big old guy, mid-60s, I guess, very heavy set, well over 6 foot. He had it looked like a disco suit, like a red silk, suit, the big red tie on the outside, the gold Italian love horn necklace. And I had no idea who these people were. But they pull in, and the female jumps out. And she goes to 4 different deputies, calling them McGowan. So obviously 48 hours before the shooting, she had no idea who I was. And none of them looked like Tommy. I was 27, 5'11", 185, a big wide earth mustache. But she went up to to Tommy Welch. Tommy was like 64 years old, like 6'2", probably 300 pounds. Deputy Chris Gush, tall, skinny, red-headed guy. Looked nothing like me. She calls 4 different deputies McGowans. So clearly she didn't know who it was. despite all the tabloid trash out there
Right.
before the shooting. Well, finally, the third deputy said, "That's McGowan over there." Well, I was standing there next to Deputy Genovese, who looked nothing like me. So she comes over there and she starts hollering at Genovese. And I was standing next to a patrol car, and the suspect that shot Susan White, her son, Jason Aguilar, is the one who did the gun sale. He's in the back of the patrol car there waiting to get the case number. And so Genovese goes, "That's McGowan." So clearly she didn't know me 48 hours of shooting, at least on my sight. And then, so she's raising hell. And finally I stood up, I said, "Listen, man." And I remember seeing her walking toward Genovese and me. I told Gino, I said, "Here comes somebody's pissed off parents." Well, she starts berating us. This is an effing setup. My innocent boy did nothing wrong.
Oh,
Even though we'll get to him in a second, what's his history. But Bato said, "You need to get your ass out of here. You're going to go to jail for interfering." And so the mobster dude she's with knew better than to provoke us on the scene. And
right.
so he grabs her, the suspect, drags her back to he had a big black Lincoln Town car. A couple minutes later, she bails out again. She had one of the first cell phones they had, like the big brick with a rubber black antenna sticking out.
Yep.
This is like 1:30 in the morning, Saturday night into Sunday morning, correct? And so she comes she comes running over to me and had Captain CJ Harper on the phone, one of the captains, not in my chain of command, but he used to be the district commander out there. And he was married also, which it came out many years later. He'd been having a 10-year affair with this woman that I shot at that point. He was married also. She sure enough, she had his phone number. It was comfortable calling him while he was at home, probably in bed with his wife at 1:30 in the middle of the night. And she goes, "Captain Harper wants to talk to you." I said, "Oh, he's not in my chain of command. I don't care. He has my beeper number." I said, he can beat me tomorrow and tell me what's going on." Well, the mobster guy, Ray Valentine was his name. He grabs her again and drags the suspect into his Lincoln Town car, trying to get out of there if they want to go to jail. And then they back up and pulling over. And I'm facing the driver's side of the car as going across. And she leans out that window and points at me over him. She said, "I'm going to get you, you son of a bitch." And pointed right at me. She did. She not only destroyed me, she destroyed my entire family. So anyway, we get the suspects down there. We made a deal with the accomplice informant. I said, "We get down there to the substation. Tell me you have asthma or something, so I can separate you, surreptitiously going to be taking you to Central, to jail, but we'll just cut you loose." So I went out, got him cut loose, and then the next morning was on Sunday morning, and I worked night shift. I got off at 6 a.m. So it was like, I think about 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, my beeper's going off with my CI's number and 911, 911. Now what, man? So I call him. He's all in a panic. He goes, "Man, I've been trying to call you all day." I said, "Yeah, I'm off, man. What do you want?" And he said that when we cut him loose from the substation, a guy in a black Eclipse pulled up and pointed a pistol at him when he went to drop off a videotape in Blockbuster Videos back when we used to have those. Recall, this is in 1992.
I remember Blockbuster real well.
Yeah, so he and his girlfriend went down there, and a guy pulled up next to him, called him a snitch, pointed a gun, we can kill you, whatever. So he gets a big chase with him. And so I get the call, like like I said, that arrest I just described happened like Saturday night and Sunday morning, 1:30 a.m. Sunday morning. About 4 o'clock Sunday, I get a call from the informant. I said, "Where are you, Michael?" His name was Michael Schaefer. I said, "Where are you, Michael?" And he said, "I'm in my brother's house." I said, "Are you safe there?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Look, I'll come and work a little bit early. I'll take care of it." It's all right. So I said, "You're going to beat this number on the pager?" And he said, "Yeah." So I went to work a little bit early. I called him, and he told me that this story just gets crazier, man. He told me that Susan White, that I wound up shooting, Jason Aguilar's mother, had called. Michael Schaefer was the informant. So this is a very important point. This all happened in Houston, Harris County. Well, Michael Schaefer, my informant, had an aunt named Sherry Maltsby that lived in Killeen, Texas, outside of Waco, where Fort Hood is. And then Michael Schaefer's mother, Jeannie Jakes, who was sisters to Sherry Maltsby, she lived in Austin. And so he told my informant, Michael was telling me that Susan White, the suspect, that she was going through they used to have long distance phone bills, and she was going through all these trying to find out why Michael Schaefer wasn't in jail when her son was. And certainly, and then somebody observed something that made them think Michael Schaefer was the informant, which he was. But well, the reason that Susan White had phone numbers with Michael Schaefer's family there, which this didn't come out to a number of years, and the other side brought up Michael Schaefer, my informant, it was 18 or 19 at the time. His best friend, Jason Aguilar, did he set up, which I didn't even know these guys were buddies. Susan White was sleeping with her best friend's buddy, my informant, Michael Schaefer. When he was living there for a while, that's why he's making phone calls to his family. And when Susan White was just randomly calling numbers she didn't know to try to find out, confirm. Anyway, Susan White calls Sherry Malsby, Michael's aunt and Colleen, leaves a message on the phone mate that they sat back then. Don't you watch TV? Don't, informants in Houston get killed long, informants, don't live long, you know what happens to informants, whatever. So the aunt gets the phone call, and this is a very important part about this aunt. The aunt gets a phone call. So she's like, these people were just, these are your average citizens. I don't use the term white trash, but they're just like meth heads working in used motorcycle shops. The kid was homeless. These weren't stand-up people at all. So anyway, the aunt and Colleen, Sherry Malsey calls her sister, Jeannie Jakes in Austin, who was my informant's mother, and says, hey, who the hell's this crazy Susan White lady? She's calling her threatening Michael to kill him, that he's an informant, blah, blah, blah. So the aunt calls her son, Michael Schaefer, in Houston, and says the mom lived in Austin. She said, hey, what the hell's going on? And he said, well, I kind of got involved in this situation. So anyway, they do a three-way call with Susan White. She makes the comments, informants in Houston don't live long, informants get killed, blah, blah, blah. So that Michael, my informant's in a panic all day Sunday. He calls me Sunday afternoon. And so I go back I go to work a bit early, like 8:30, 9 o'clock that night. I call him. He gives me all this information I just relayed to you. I said, let me call the district attorney's office. Apparently we have an issue, a legitimate charge of felony retaliation for threatening witness, in a criminal episode.
Right.
Investigation, I should say. So I call the DA, speak to Jean Sparling Hughes. She was the assistant district attorney that was working intake. They have intake is 24/7 at the DA's office. That's your police officers, deputy. They call, talk to the DA. This is what we got. And the DA will say, y'all accept a charge on burglary or whatever, And so I talked to Jean Sparling Hughes. And by this time, it's like 10 o'clock at night. And she told me, she said, well, you need to speak to Michael Schaefer's mother, because Susan White made the threats to her in Austin. So we go through a rigmarole because trying to find her. And in Austin PD, finally figured out where she was, had her call me. And she told me what the threats were made, which is absolutely, feats the legal elements of felony retaliation. Absolutely. And then and I asked her, because I've done this before, I asked her, I said, well, do you think this Miss White, I said, do you think she has the ability to hurt, cause harm or kill Michael or have somebody else do it? She goes, I know. She goes, that bitch is crazy. I've talked to her on the phone before. Yeah. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to get a warrant and go have her arrested. It's all right. So I drive to the DA's office, and let me back up. The DA then, Jean Sparling Hughes, she got off at midnight. And so, and by the time I got to the DA's office, did the report and whatnot, it was like 1:30 in the morning. So she had briefed Jim Mount, the DA that was taking over at midnight, the prosecutor, who's lied about this whole thing. Yeah, both DAs.
A prosecutor lied? What?
I know that's absolutely shocking, but it does, despite CSI and
NCIS and all
law
of
and
them.
order and all that. Prosecutors do lie.
No,
they're the most evil
never.
people they lie more than all the other people in the entire criminal justice system combined. That's how you scam up the
absolutely.
prisons. Yeah. So anyway, I got to meet with Jim Mount. Go over, looks at my report. All right, that's good. Well, whatever. And then it's like 4 o'clock in the morning at this point, and I get off at 6 a.m. And so I said, hey, because what they would do, their policy was they would just call a judge. They had a judge on call 24/7. And you literally go to the judge's house like 3 in the morning, get warrant signed. So it was 4 in the morning. He said, well, I'm not calling the judge. He said, you just wait around, do it in the morning. This judge who helped me out, who wanted to be a U.S. representative. He said, this judge gets here at 6 a.m. and it was like 4. well, I'm going to hang out because we had take home cars. We'd usually eat at Denny's at for 30 minutes and burn off at 5:30. So I never take possession of that warrant. I leave that warrant at the DA's office. You know, and if I was going to do this big plot to go kill this woman, I would have taken it. I would have waited 2 hours and got the warrant, gone done it. But I left
Right.
it. Then I bumped my Tommy Moore was my relief deputy that came on at 6 a.m. I bumped Tommy. I said, "Hey, there's a warrant down here for Susan White, 3407 Amber Forest. Hey, come pick it up. Whenever you get time, run it today." So I would have been handing it off to another deputy. That's one of several steps that. So anyway, or if that DA would have done his job, this would not have happened. Jim Mount. So anyway, about 10 o'clock that morning, Tommy called me on my beeper. I recognized the number as being the DA's office, so I call. And it's Tommy Moore, and he said, "Hey, I'm here with this prosecutor, and she's pissed off, and the judge won't sign the warrant because the DA's office actually used to do this. White out the correction fluid. They
Yeah.
write it out my name where all three places where I sign is in final the warrant." And so Tommy Moore, the relief deputy, said, "Yeah, you have to come here and sign it." And I said, "Well, just leave it at the clerk's office. I'll come get it. I'll come in early tonight." Well, he said, "This prosecutor wants to talk to you." Man, this female prosecutor ripped me up one side down there. "Why in the hell didn't you run this last night?" I said, "I tried. Your coworker, Jim Mountain, wouldn't do it. He told me to wait. I got off at 6. So that's I didn't care who arrested her. She needed to be arrested. It didn't get the
Right.
rest of me. So anyway, I come in the next night, and this is the night of the shooting. I come in the next night, and I was running all this by my lieutenant, Jay Coons. Fantastic guy, great supervisor, very smart man. He's a college professor now, teaching this type of stuff. And he's also interviewed with my guys on this. But anyway, I'm running by lieutenant, and then I get there, and he was off that night, but I called him at his house. And he said, "Yeah." He goes, and he gave me a direct order: get the warrant. That woman needs to be picked up before somebody gets killed. Threatening a CI, automatic weapons. And Lieutenant Coons had made calls for Jason Aguilar, the son of the suspect shot, that he'd been in automatic weapons, gunfights, for a few months prior to all this. And that little Jason Aguilar, he tried to burn down the next door neighbor's, $1 million home. Terrorized neighbor for 10 years. He got caught with a stolen 45 automatic. He literally rode the little yellow bus to school. He decided one day not to go to school, so he pulls out a stolen 45 automatic, points it at the bus driver, and said, but that whole family's something else. He's been in and out of prison. They brought him to testify against me in shackles because he's probably still in Angola prison for robbery, drugs, burglary. Mm. But anyway, they trying to stick to the story here. I go to the DA's office, and there was another DA there. Great guy, great guy. He wound up being he was an assistant district attorney. Wound up being a district criminal district judge. Then wound up being the district attorney. Then he passed away in office right when he's trying to help me. And the governor of Texas put his wife in, who's also a judge, as the district attorney. But I went and talked to that. His name was Mike Anderson. Great guy, great guy. And when we went to get the warrant the second night, there was a younger HPD officer at the time. And I was only 27, but he was like 22. And they sent us down. They give us our warrants, and they say, "Hey, go down to Judge Don Shipley. Here's his address." So it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Was there? It was about midnight, because we spent about an hour at the judge's house. His wife. I remember the old judge tell me his wife had passed away recently, and that he was showing his gun collection. So it wasn't like this big hurry to go, like they said in the books, not the books that Jerry wrote, but so anyway, get the warrant signed, go back to the station. I bump David Ruggiero, the cowardly sergeant, and I said, "Hey, I've got the warrant." He said, "Well, bring it in here." I despise that guy. He hated all of us. Nobody trusted him. But so I go to the station. He's in his office, and Deputy Morong and Deputy Malloy were there. And the sergeant sitting behind his desk, right? He was trying to yanks the warrant out of my hand. I looks at it, and he said, "Take Morong and Malloy and go run." Is it okay if I cuss in a direct quote?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is important.
Absolutely.
Because Ruggiero was, I mean, we're Texas boys down here. And being law, we have our little axioms and sayings and whatnot. We let one fly now and then. But Ruggiero looks at me and he goes, he said, "Take Morong and Malloy and run this." He goes, "Run the fucking warrant." I said, hey man, you need to go out there with us, Ruggiero. I said, I mean, this is about automatic weapons, burglary, gangs, drugs. You need to get off your ass and go out there and win this war. And actually, his quote is the first sentence in the book that Jerry Lincoln wrote. What are you, some kind of fucking pussy? That's the first sentence in the book. Excuse my
Wow.
language, I don't say I'm from a female, but that's what that sergeant tells me. I said, look, man, if you're not going to run this, you need to get more deputies, to run this warrant. Because I was a
Right.
Houston PD at the time. We'd have a sergeant, at least 8 of us run a felony warrant. And there's just 2 of us, And these are good old boy deputies. They've been out for a while. So again, he repeated. I don't give a fuck. He said, what are you, some kind of fucking pussy? Take him wrong lawyer and run the fucking warrant. That's how he talked to us. And I don't take that now. I didn't take it back then. And so, wrong and Lorna, whatever, man. And walked down and said, hang on, this is very important. Before I left the substation, I tried calling the suspect twice. Because back then, I don't know if they have it now, but they have what was called a no arrest bond, where you get your lawyer, go to the bonding company and pay your bond so you don't go to jail for a couple, 1 or 2 nights or whatever. I figure being a wealthy lady in a nice neighborhood, sure she should have an attorney because her son was a permanent criminal.
A repeat
And
offender.
yeah, that's the thing nicely. Yeah. Yeah, wait till we get to the history about Susan White and her history. But anyway, uh, and she didn't answer, so I hang up. Why would I've served hundreds of warrants. Why would I call a suspect? Hey, we have a arrest warrant. Turn yourself in. Then my big
Right.
murder scheme. What if she had picked up the phone and said, "Okay, my lawyer, I'll be here in an hour." Well, damn, there goes my murder scheme, my whole plot, right?
Right.
So anyway, she didn't. We have the recording of the phone mate where there were 2 hangups called from that station. So anyway, Ron and Roy and I walk up the front of the substation. I tell them, "Hey, this is the situation." All right. So we go over to where the house is, and where the shooting occurred. And we park. You always park like a door or 2 down. You don't park right in front of a house for a possible ambush. So anyway, Deputy Malloy goes around to the back of the house, and Deputy Morong and I go to the front of the house, and it had these big double, probably cost several $1,000s, French cut glass doors. Like I said, this is a very nice home. You know? And Malloy and I go up there. Malloy bangs on Morong and I'm sorry, with the front door, and Morong's banging on the door. And it was a minute or 2 later, hear his voice, which found out was Susan White, completely slurred. She had several different drugs in her system, of course, of the shooting. She was a lifelong drug addict, alcoholic. We'll get into that. Convicted felon, illegally bought a gun, but she to murder her husband with. But anyway, the gun she pulled on me, by the way. And anyway,
Oh
Morong
my
at the
goodness.
yeah, Morong and I are at the front door banging on the door. She's, who is it? Who is it? And she had called 911 34 nights in a row and kept reporting there's somebody breaking in my house, there's a robbery, somebody stole my stuff. And she get these deputies open the door. She opened the door wearing nothing, or maybe a thong or a little, nightie or whatever. And then she started sleeping with these other deputies. Then they bumped up the chain of command to the captain, that's CJ Harper. I didn't know any of this. Nobody told me any of this stuff was going on. So I was only out there like 5 months for the shooting, right? And so anyway, Deputy Morong, Todd Morong and I are at the front door. Todd's banging, slurred voice. She's hollering through the door, and she said, "Oh, I want to see your IDs." And Morong said, "Well, you have to open the door. We're in uniform.
Right.
And Morong's telling her, "Hey, open the door. We can't stick them under the door. Open the door." Oh God! So she starts calling 911, screaming and hollering. They're trying to break in my house. I don't know if you've listened to 911 calls or not. Very disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. First time I heard him, I was like, "What?" And that's another thing. I knew this was being recorded because 911, the sheriff's dispatchers and were talking to me on the radio. So I know this is all being recorded. So again, I'm not going to go murder somebody with 2 policemen I don't know while it's being recorded, right? Yeah. So
Well, I mean,
Morong
you
and I are
wouldn't
out.
think a smart cop would do that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd have to be the king of the masterminds just to work out the way they alleged.
Yeah.
But anyway, we spent little over 15 minutes at the front door, you know, and then she starts hollering, "Get McGowan on!" Never mentioned my first name or I go by Kent as my middle name. First name's Joseph. She kept on, "Get McGowan off my property." Yeah, I'll open the door. And what? So I told Todd, "Hey, I'm gonna step back." So I stepped back and got on the radio, called that cowardly Ruggiero, who was. I said, "Hey, you need to get out on the back channel is a tactical channel. It's just like car to car, you know, and it's not like recorded. And I said, "Hey, man, you need to get your ass out here. I said, she's not opening the door. She's clearly, high on something. And we know there's a gun in there, at least one gun, you know? And then he goes, yeah, I'm monitoring the radio. I said, what do you mean to do? Because there was no policy to do that. You didn't have to have permission. I didn't trust the sergeant. None of us did. So I wanted him to say, you need to make forced entry, And what if he would have said, no, I'll be out there. There goes my big plot again,
Right, right.
And so he goes, excuse my language again, but he said, it's a fucking felony warrant. Kick the fucking door. So I'm like, man, what an asshole, right? So I'm back and told Deputy Morong, I said, hey, keep going. I said, Zero said to force the door. So I was a pretty good sized guy back then. Todd's way bigger than me, a big old dude. And, Marine, big old guy. And Todd kicked back, hit the door, tried to kick the door a couple of times. It just wasn't budging. I remember I looked at Todd and I said, hey, there's no sense in tearing down a $10,000 door. I'll go around back with my lawyer and we'll make forced entry. You maintain security at the front door. And he's all right. So I go around the back to Malloy. I tell him that Ruggiero, from the safety and comfort of his office, ordered us to kick the door. And Malloy, we banged on the door for a few more minutes back then. And then, well, Morong's at the front. He sees a suspect moving toward the house, through the house toward us, with something in her hand. So our radios are different channels at times. So I was talking to back channel, and he was on the primary. So he immediately realizes that we can't hear him. So he burns around the house. While he's burning around the house, Malloy kicks door once, nothing happens. Let me back up. When Morong tried to kick in the front door, if that would have gone down, he would have been the first one in and shot the suspect. There was another chance that my big murder scheme could have got foiled, right?
Right.
Because he would have been the first one going in. So we burn around back, and Malloy kicks the door. First time, nothing happens. He kicks the second time. I hear it crack the door frame, and the alarm goes off. He said, man, it's not coming down. I said, mule kick it. So he turns around backward, bam, the whole door frame crashes through, which the house had been destroyed on the inside. We'll get to that after we talk about that for shooting here. The house is completely destroyed on the inside. Well, Malloy kicked in the back door. It's like a small utility room, right? Well, he goes in first, but he trips over his trash and dirty clothes and falls. So just, from my training experience and officer safety, I go over him to protect him,
Right.
because he's laying on the ground in the dark trying to scramble to get up. It would have been an easy target. So if Malloy's kicking the back door, if he would have gone straight in, he would have shot the suspect. But he tripped and fell. So when I went over him, that put me number one in the stick, the first guy going in, right? So it was going in the door. It was me, Deputy Malloy, and I did not know Todd Morong was behind us at this point. But there's a lot of controversy over what I'm about to tell you. I look in the room. It was dark. It was 1:30 in the morning. It was dark in the house, except I think a little TV was on in the bedroom. I don't remember it, but I've had other people there say it was, because all this happened in a matter of seconds. I looked straight ahead to the utility room, like where your washer machine would be and whatnot. I looked through there, and there's a small, like a little breakfast nook, if you will. The kitchen, it's a very large house. Then the formal dining was behind that. To my right, I cleared that, split second, cleared to my right. There's a large living room, which is trashed up. We'll get in that minute. But I see the bedroom door, which was going into the bedroom suite that I didn't know at the time. I see the suspect not going in, but crossing the doorway right to left. I see something in her hand. Well, I'm thinking, I knew she'd been hollering in the phone this whole time. So I thought it was the phone. They said the rechargeable phones with a big antenna on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see something flash, my flashlight. I clearly see her, going from right to left. So, I don't know if I think Malloy said, I was saying, there's a suspect or something. I don't recall that, but you're moving and, you're doing your thing then. So I shoot right toward the bedroom door where I see the suspect and two of the deputies behind me. There's all this controversy out there. These ridiculous documentaries and that tabloid trash book, A Warrant to Kill, where, why did he beeline right to her, without searching the rest of the house? Well, any law enforcement officer, any civilian with no training would even agree to this. You see, for lack of a better term, you see the target of your warrant, the suspect you're there to arrest, moving in, you see them in the residence. You're not going to go search the rest of the house and leave the suspect down there to grab a gun, which is what happened, or whatever. I mean, immediately that's
Or
who you're there to
leave.
arrest. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, you know. But she that that goes to the no knock warrant situation we'll discuss. But I see her beelining across the right, so I shoot right to her. You know, so I get to the door. I know Malloy's right behind me. I don't know Morong's behind me, but Malloy. I lean in the door. It's hard to do in a small camera thing, but I lean in the door, and the suspect has her right elbow against her right hip with a nickel plated Lorson pistol pointed at me, right? And so you literally do see tunnel vision in that situation. Things slow down, you know. And I see like that, and I have my flashlight up and to the left, which is tactically sound, not holding it with your gun, up to the left, and I have my Glock in my right hand. And I lean in the door, and I see her standing. She never says a word to me. And I see her standing there, you know, kind of get wound up on this. It's overwhelming at times, you know. But
Well, I'm
she,
sure there's a little PTSD from the whole situation. And, you know,
yeah,
regardless of whether you went there with intent to do it or not, you're a police officer. You know that at any point you can lose your life in the line of duty.
mhm,
You're also former military, so you have that training as well. And when you see danger, you're going to react. But people think that, oh, well, they just shoot them and they move on and they don't deal with it later. But I mean, this has been how many years now? And
34. Yeah,
you're not going to forget the trauma that
yeah,
caused, because at the end of the day, a human life was taken. Whether the tabloids want to blow it up that you purposely did it, or you were doing your job executing a warrant on a felon who pulled a gun and had it pointed at a police officer, what are you supposed to do? Let him shoot you? I mean, it just, the whole thing don't make sense. But most people don't understand that even though this is your job, you're still a human being,
correct.
and
Yeah,
you still go through PTSD from these types of situations. It's not an easy thing just to, I would actually be more worried if you didn't get choked up, because then what kind of psychopath are you? You know what I mean? You can take a
true.
human life and not. Now, there are some people that, some rabid dogs that could be put down, and I wouldn't shed any tears at all, because, you don't hurt women and children. But that's a whole nother issue. But you know what I mean? They want to criminalize everything.
Hmm.
They want to criminalize the police. And I'm as much as I hear, and as many cases as I've handled of wrongful convictions and everything, my daddy was a cop in the Air Force for 31 years. My brother was in the Air Force. He was security police as well for a while before he went in to do other um, things that are not allowed to be talked about. So I've been around cops my whole life. And this crazy defund the police, no, that's the stupidest thing. Unless you want to go back to the Wild West days where we just shoot everybody. I mean, cops are probably, first responders in general are probably some of the most selfless people, because
Yeah,
they will run headfirst into danger. Military too. They run headfirst into danger to protect people they don't even know.
true. Or
There are,
people that hate you.
yeah, because that's your job, that you feel that's your calling, that's what you're supposed to do. So for people to criminalize what happened to you, it just, I
Yeah,
can't
I
even put
was.
words to the fury that it brings in me.
Well, I tell you, that's what I did in the Air Force in the Guard Rangers. I was a security police, want to be an
Mm.
instructor, but I've done another podcast. I think it's discussing the book that Jerry Langton wrote. But like nowadays, a police officer gets in a shooting, they get like totally clean sheet. They get like 3 weeks off with pay and whatever. I never had a day off. And the night of the shooting, we finished. It was like 4 in the morning. Well, Todd, Morong, and Malloy, we all got off at 6. They went back on the street on patrol for 2 hours, and that was on my that was on a Tuesday morning, and my days off were Tuesday, Wednesday. And so I went right back to work after my 2 days off. And then like a week into it, I called Ruggiero and I said, "Hey man, I said, I need a day off, man. I'm tired of everybody working, And I remember he called me and said, what are you, a fucking pussy? He said, if you don't come into work, I think you're pussy. I said, man, I hated that guy. So I was gonna burn my own sick day. And then uh man, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after the shooting, it was probably 3 weeks. I was out somewhere with a major of the patrol bureau. He's a good guy, actually. I was out with the major and some other supervisors or whatever. And the major asked, well, how'd you go with your psych? Because like at Houston PD, they're their own psychological services, psychiatrists, psychologists,
Right.
The county, the sheriff didn't. He just went to somebody he contracted with. So I told the major, I said, I never went. He goes, why didn't you go? I said, nobody said anything about it. And he goes, you had been on your days off? I said, I've had no days off. I haven't had a day off since the shooting. He's like, oh, hell no. You know, he said, I'm making some calls. You be at this address at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I went in there and talked to the psychologist where he was, probably 10 minutes. Then I did that MMPI test,
Mm-hmm.
and he graded that. And he called me and we talked for like 45 minutes. He said, we flatlined completely across the MMPIs. He said, you're doing all right? I said, whatever. He said, I'm going to sign off. You go back to work. And I said, well, that's good, but I've been working. He said, what? I said, I've had a day off since this. That psychiatrist almost lost his mind. You what? Oh, yeah. And that's been made a big issue, They still no days off, nothing. But
Yeah,
but
you got to
back,
have time after something like this. You have to have
yeah,
some downtime to process what just
yeah,
happened, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. We'll get into that some of that stuff about just how everybody in my family just ignored it and all for all these years, because they didn't know what to do. But we'll get into that. But back onto the shooting scene when I came out leaving the room, the door to the bedroom opened to the left. It'd be swing from my right to my left, and there was
Okay.
like a small dresser or something there, and on top of it was a television. On top of it was the old cable converter boxes they used to have. Yeah. So door backed up to that. I look up, and she's right to the left in the corner. In the flash of mine, she's fixing to shoot. She's in ambush us, right? And she was standing in the left-hand corner, and right to her left was the bed, and then a wall on the other side of that. Pauline, I see she has her gun in her right hand and her right elbow to her right hip. And I said, drop the gun, drop the gun. And then after I said the second time, she comes up, points the gun right in my face, kind of leaned over a little bit, pointing the gun, and went the proverbial Mexican standoff, which was ballistics were way to be at least 11 feet apart. And I see her, and she had her weapon index, which means her finger wasn't on the trigger at that point. And I told her, I said a third time. I said, actually, a third time, I said, drop the gun, I'm going to shoot. I see her put her finger on the trigger and start to squeeze, In a split second, she thought in my head she was going to gun me down and get Mariah Malloy. Those guys were married with kids. I was divorced at the time, but my wife, I was still best friends this day. But I had kids, and it's flashed in my head she's going to take me out and shoot Mariah Malloy, And then so I fired 3 rounds. And the first round clipped through her right cuff, and it struck in center mass as we're trained to do.
Right.
And we're trained because when everybody had revolvers, they trained you to fire 2-round bursts. You get three
Yep.
2-round bursts out of the revolver. When everybody started going automatics, they went to a 3-round burst. And so that's bullet one clipped her right cuff, struck her right in center mass, which knocked her a bit to the left. And bullet two was following one and hit her in the right arm, went through the right arm and just barely into the chest, non-fatal wound. And then round three, as I was backing up, I clipped the good old cable converter box, and bullet went through it and ricocheted, and the suspect literally fell into the path of the bullet, which struck the right side of the nose and through the nose and then across the cheek like that. But and then the suspect fell in the bed. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
And that's the first one I'd seen Morong at the scene, right? Let me back up. Another thing, what if we had gone in there for me to commit this murder, my big scheme, and she not have a gun? I got 2 officers that don't even know there, But that's another aspect of it. But she fell face down, and the gun was under her right hand, under her right knee. She fell kind of face down, but she's on her left side. And I didn't know she'd been struck because it was night. Now you have the muzzle blast, your night vision's gone. There's smoke in the room. The alarm's going off. People are hollering in the radio. And Moran ran underneath me and jumped on top of the suspect. And then he picked her up and looked at her. He said, I think she's dead. And they made a big issue about this. Put it out. Rounds are fired. And when you get that situation, I guess people, it strikes them differently. Pissed me off. This woman's this suspect trying to shoot me. It made me angry. And then that was my first emotion, I'm trying to say. And Malloy, I knew Malloy was on top of me. So I turned to him and I said, "Man, you heard me. I told her, told her to drop the gun, like that." But during trial, it hit me like a nudge, wink, like we all conspired on this, right? Oh no, this is you heard me, right? You heard me. You heard me say you married. It wasn't like that at all, man. It was a total panic, outrage is what it was. Fuck, man, I told her drop the gun. You heard me tell her. So Morong runs in there, gets on like that, and so she was obviously, in a fatal wound. So I'd step back. I get on the radio. I was Unit 4176. I'll never forget this. I got on the radio. I said, 4176, shots fired. All deputies are okay. Suspects down. Roll EMS supervisor in a package. Package is the DA's office, internal affairs, homicide. And so Ron Lloyd went to search the rest of the house. Well, I just backed up so at the bedroom door. And they went upstairs and found Jason Aguilar, her son, there. And he was also in 911, which he was supposed to be in jail, no bonded. How he got out, we have no idea. But he's up there, smoking weed and whatever. They crash the door and get him and take him down. I remember him standing there at the bedroom doorway, and he looks at me and smirks at me and walked by. But in all this other stuff, he said that he looked at me and I was smirking and laughing about his mom getting shot, right? He smirks at me, So they take him out, put him in the patrol car, and then everybody makes a scene. Ruggiero, he finally got out of his comfortable office where he was safe and secure. Ruggiero makes the scene, and he gets there, and he goes, "Hey, down here, we call patrol cars or shop." And he said, "Hey, go sit in my shop." And he gets out, and he throws me a legal pad and a pen, and said, "Write down everything happened." No, you do not do that. And as I was with the city, I was a shift steward for the police union, so I pretty much know the process. But those other deputies already called the union, because you always have your lawyers on standby, if you will. So Clint Greenwood, my lawyer, who wound up getting assassinated on my birthday in 2017, Clint Greenwood makes the scene, and then Steve Clappert makes the scene, the investigator. And then Ed Porter and Don Smith were the prosecutors. Don Smith at the time was the chief of the Civil Rights Division. That's the division that investigates police shootings and public corruption, which they were the public corruption. But anyway,
kind of hard to investigate yourself.
The only time I'd ever seen Don Smith was he taught civil rights or something when I was at the police academy. Never talked to the guy, But they make the scene. We do the walkthrough with them, the homicide detective, who's been behind me this whole time. Man, we have about an hour-long statement from him, a video statement, how they ordered him to destroy his documents. After 34 years, all of them were every law enforcement person involved in all this. They were threatened with their careers if they talked back then. And when I first got out, I got a phone, which I'd never seen before, a cell phone. I had over 200 police officers and deputies reach out to me. "Hey, man, we all knew what happened. We'll get into that later." But we do the walk through the scene, and it was a circus, man. Because I've been for Houston PD, where you're trained. There's ways you do things. The way you're trained, there's the way you do things, and there's things supposed to be done. But there was a capital murder scene in my beat. As a side note, I was at my parents' ranch. I lived like an hour from where I worked. We had take-home cars. That Ruggiero calls me like 2 hours before I was supposed to be at work. "Hey, we got a capital murder. I need you to make this scene." And I said, "Hey, I'm like an hour away. I don't care, man. Run hot. Lights and sirens." I get that capital murder scene. A woman got murdered and tortured during a burglary. Man, there's deputies in there literally poking the dead body and touching stuff. And I was like, hey, man, And then Ruggiero digging around. He finds before we had computer phones, an address book. And he told me to start calling people to find out who this woman is and tell them their daughter would have been murdered. Say, that body doesn't belong to me. That's his job, And then Rogero was married at the time, but he had a girlfriend who owned a bar called SRO, Standing Room Only. It was a quite successful sports bar. But if anything went on in that sports bar, he would call me to go take care of it. He hated me, but he knew I was a damn good police officer. And I knew what I was doing. And my beat was like 15 miles away, you know. I remember I had a girl got run over on drugs coming out of a teen bar. And he'd always run me calls outside of my beat. And then there was a double murder, and he called me to go out and take care of it. And then that guy was something else. But anyway, Rogero puts me in the car, his car, and tells me to write it down. I said, I'm not writing down anything. I'm going to tell my lawyer gets here. That's ridiculous, you know. And so my lawyer gets there. We do the walkthrough. You know, that's when you walk through the homicide, internal affairs, DA's office, whatever, I'm your lawyer. And I remember looking in the bedroom door, and I was standing next to my lawyer, Clint Greenwood, great lawyer, great police officer, murdered by an assassin. But anyway, he kind of elbowed me. He said, "Hey, don't make us, don't." He's kind of whispered, "Look at that letter written right there next to you." Well, right next to the bedroom door, they said those big, your mom and dad probably have a big stereo speaker for the turntable,
Mhm.
whenever it's like 3 foot tall. There's a legal pad there with a handwritten letter by Susan White, the suspect. And she said, and this is clearly written in the 48 hours between the arrest of her son and the shooting. It was written to Sheriff Johnny Clevenhagen, the sheriff at the time. And it says something to the effect of, we have this letter. I'm coming to you about another one, your, blah, 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 redneck deputies harassed everybody. And she put in there deputy, and it literally drew a line, because she didn't know my name at that time. She literally drew a line with a fill in, I guess it's talking about me, to fill it in, afterward. But we do the walkthrough, go back to the station, and I give my statement with a homicide, Chuck Leitner, great, still policeman. Been a policeman like 50 years. Chuck Leitner, and my lawyer was there, and some secretary or whatever assistant was there typing it. Yeah, but then I went home, and nobody ever called me. Hey man, how's it going? How you like my buddies would, but not official people from the sheriff's department. Nobody. Hey man,
Right.
you want to have a beer? Hey, do you need to talk? Nothing. And so when I get my lawyers, then they call me down to their office. They said, just this is going to take a year. Just lay low, man. It's all right. But I went to their office one day, and there was a very tall guy coming out. I mean, like 6'8", really nice, brisk guy. And he's walking out of the lawyer's office, and they said, "Hey, guess who that was?" I said, "I haven't a clue. Basketball player." And it was an investigator from the insurance company. The suspect I shot had there was a life insurance policy. I think it was 2.5 million, and they wouldn't
Wow.
pay it out. Yeah, their investigation found that she was in the commission of a felony, which resulted in her death. But the day of the let me back up a little bit. At the morning of the shooting, okay, I'll skip the big part. Hang on. But anyway, the morning of the shooting, the good captain we had, Smith. I don't recall his first name, but Captain Smith called Lieutenant. They called Jason Aguilar's son in and told him what happened. So he gets on the phone. He gets out and he calls Michael Schaefer, the informant, and asks Michael, "Hey, do you have a key to the house? I need to get in there and get my mom's jewelry so I can sell it." He could not care less for his mother. He's trying to get her jewelry. But I'm gonna have to back up on something, so you might have to edit this. Let me go back. But when we went the night when I arrested the informant and uh, Jason Aguilar, the suspect's son, and the other bad guy who lied, he was actually Keith Skura, the other guy was with him. He was a target of the investigation. So it wasn't like I was trying to get this Jason Aguilar trying to set up his mom. I didn't even know who this kid was,
Right.
But but that night when I go to the station, we put the dudes in jail. They're all adults. They had stolen credit cards, debit cards on them. Jason had a Mustang his mom had bought him, and it had bullet holes all in it from shootings, doing drive-bys and whatnot. Lieutenant Coons identified him as being involved in at least 4 shootings that Lieutenant Coons had attended to, let alone the other commanders and supervisors. But I'm sitting doing my paperwork. Lieutenant Coons is sitting across the desk from me. We're just shooting the bull. I was doing the paperwork, and a phone rings, and Coons answered it, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "Mm-hmm." They looks at me and makes this goofy face. He goes, "All right, well, I'll look into it." He hangs up. I said, "Who was that?" And he goes, "That was the mother from out there. She was calling me, making all kind of crazy accusations or whatever." And then she calls back like 5 minutes later. He's like, "All right, Miss White, we'll take care of it." And he talked to her for like 6 or 8 minutes. He hangs up. And I said, What the hell is she calling about?" He's saying, "Oh, she was saying that on the arrest of her son earlier that night, that I was out there asking her if she was divorced yet, telling her she had shapely legs, asked her if she wanted to go out." Well, there was like all these deputies, record drivers. It was in a nightclub. None of that. I'm sure none of that happened. Absolutely
Right.
not. And she's the only one who's ever made that comment. But then about an hour later, she shows up at the substation. Now it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm there doing paperwork. I heard her screaming and hollering out in the hallway, and Lieutenant Coons, Chris Gush, who was there, and Scott Genovese, who wound up committing suicide over this, one of my best friends. They go in the hallway and they come out and say, "What the hell is that? It's just that crazy ass lady, man." And Coons told her finally, "You need to get a ride and get out. You're going to go to jail." You know. So anyway, but then what happened? I told you. And then shooting went down. Went right back to work, and it was weird going back to work because it was like everybody's told not to say anything, But then I have a few guys I talked to out there, man, say, "Hey, what the hell's going on, man?" Well, then the shooting occurred on August 25 in 1992, and then the grand jury convened end of October. It usually takes about 2 or 3 hours. Grand jury dragged on for 6 weeks, man, and I was divorced at the time, and for 7 years through that, and then remarried, same wife afterward. But man, I had girlfriends calling me, "Hey man, the DA's calling me. What do you mean tell him?" I said, "I never had an issue with any of them. In my
Right.
times when I was married and had girlfriends, they knew it. But that was just a culture. Mine was this is in '92, in the '80s and '90s. But we're all wild back then. But yeah, man, these girls are calling saying, "Hey, they're asking us." They had nothing. People had nothing to do with the shooting. Policemen, guys I worked with, and whatever, and worked for, they were calling them. And so we knew something was up. And then uh, all of a sudden, Scott Genovese, this is important, one of my best friends. He was an instructor with me on the streets with me, good officer, good officer. And then Scott, all of a sudden, Scott quit talking to us. Then Scott wouldn't talk to my lawyers. So, man, something happened. And then I go testify. Anytime a police officer injures or kills somebody, it's just standard operating procedure to go to the grand jury. So I get called a grand jury. Then they try to speed my wife in there. And then she said, because I don't in Texas, you can't be compelled to get to testify against your.
Don't let these stories end just because this episode is over. If you believe in the work that we're doing, here's how you can help us right now. Follow Wickedly Judged wherever you listen to podcasts. Share this episode with someone who cares about truth and accountability. Follow us on social media. Leave a review. It's one of the fastest ways to help more people find these cases. If you happen to share a post on social media, tag us so we can thank you and amplify the conversation. And if you're able to support the mission directly, please donate to help fuel our investigations, advocacy, and education efforts. Or support the work by grabbing merchandise at wickedlyjudged.com. Every share, review, donation, and purchase helps us keep pushing for real justice reform. As always, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay hopeful, because nobody deserves to be wickedly judged.